I just want to thank you all once again for coming out and participating and listening to our amazing presentations in our virtual research conference tonight. My name is Jenn Zauflik, and this is my presentation on the introduction of success and youth involvement at an elementary school level. So before I dive into my presentation, I just want to focus my first few slides on explaining my personal relationship with the idea of success and also how I reached this idea of success and youth involvement as a research topic over the course of this semester. And without further ado, I'm going to begin my presentation. So growing up, the idea of success for me was one that was a very complicated stigma to understand. I never really understood the idea of success, and I still don't fully comprehend the immediate definition of it as of today. So growing up, it was really difficult for me since I struggled with a learning disability like dyslexia, and oftentimes I would get bullied in school because of it. I never felt secure in myself, and I never felt secure in my work, especially in general education classes like math, science, and literacy. So growing up, this idea of success was one that was introduced at such an early age. And I didn't really understand exactly what success meant, but there was three things I associated with. When I thought of success as a kid, I thought you had to be the smartest kid in the room. Having that knowledge, that textbook knowledge of being able to understand every single equation or the scientific method or anything that you possibly could that you retained from a classroom, that's what made you successful. That was the one thing I associated with success growing up, is that you had to be smart. The second thing I associated with success when I was growing up was money. It was one of those things where we had this idea that we were all going to grow up and be this successful business person or the successful doctor or lawyer, and making the most money was the way you would be successful. Money to me associated that success, that goal, that you were on top of the world. You were the most successful because you had an immense amount of money. And the last thing that I associated with success when I was growing up was achieving goals. Even if those goals were minor, they still led me to that success. So if I set a goal for myself and I achieved it, I was considered successful at that point. Whether that was, getting a better grade on a test that I was studying really hard for that I maybe didn't do well on before. That little small goal still made me associate that idea of success by achieving those goals, no matter how big or how small. But what does success actually mean? And why is it introduced at such a young age? So this one concept that I always kept considering when I was writing and thinking about this topic, especially in my personal experience and doing my research for this entire presentation, was the one question that I always came back to, that I was asked over and over and over, and I still hear over and over and over again in my personal experience working in a school, is what do you want to be when you grow up? I feel like it's one of those questions that is set up for failure. You are at an age when you are young where you are given the option to be anything. You are at the age where you are creative and you are an imaginative, and it's one of those things when you are in, even kindergarten, as early as kindergarten or as early as, preschool, this question is asked, and it is still asked over and over again. And even at my age, you could ask me what I want to be when I grow up, and I could still not completely or fully know what I want to do with my life, because that idea of what do you want to be when you grow up shouldn't be a solid, concrete idea. So why are we asked when we grow up? And every answer to this question that you're asked when you're a child is perfectly fine until princesses don't make money. You'll never survive as an artist professionally, or be a doctor. You'll be so successful. Why is this question, what do you want to be grow up, such a big, impactful idea that you need to determine? And why is our answer not good enough? Why is success driven by a definition at all? Why can't we just follow our own definition of success in our own lives? That is one of the things that I absolutely dove into when I was researching this topic. Why are we introduced to this idea so early on? I feel like when we are children, it is so hard for us to even understand the concepts that we are learning in class, to even think about what we want to consider when we grow up. This ideology of success ultimately becomes an identity for some people. There's too much value put on this perceived idea of success as being a measure of success as a person instead of as a goal or a thing that we should be achieving. Success becomes one of those things where it's not just something that is inanimate. It becomes part of us. It becomes this kind of identity, this personality that we start to obtain, especially at such a young age, because we are introduced to it right when we enter school. Success is one of those key components of our everyday lives, whether we acknowledge its presence or not. From a young age, it's integrated into every aspect of our lives, whether that's at home, at school, extracurricular activities, and especially in our own mental health. We put so much pressure on students to do well academically, especially in school, so they can get into a good school and they can get a successful job. But where where does the happiness come in? Where does this understanding that we're doing something because we want to do it and because we love it? Why does success drive us to do things that we might not or ultimately might not want to do with our lives? Why is success one of these things that's held above our head that we cannot fully understand? Why is it introduced so early on? Why are we introduced to this idea before we can even hold a pencil, before we can even hold scissors and cut out, before we can even fully write our name? This idea of success is presented to us. I have created a visual idea map that helped me get through the entire process of my creative thinking for this topic idea. So I wanted to start out by thinking about youth involvement at an elementary school level and thinking back to my personal experience as a kid. I had so much struggles with learning and understanding. Comprehension was one of the biggest things that I struggled with. So this background understanding of the oil pastels kind of going in a spiral is a representation of how I feel like I would have felt in that moment if I were thinking about taking a math test or thinking about having to do a spelling bee in school and standing in front of the entire class. This idea that my brain was all over the place, that I couldn't even focus on one single idea because I had so much anxiety of learning and comprehending in school. The idea that I wouldn't succeed in something was traumatizing for me. It was very scary, and it caused this anxious kind of spiral in my head. And I feel like that's what that background spiraling of ideas represents in this idea map for me. I kind of developed two questions that I want you all to consider when thinking about this presentation so far, and as I continue going through what my intentions were for the visual representation. So how do you personally measure success in your own life? This can be your own definition, the way that you've experienced it at a young level or that maybe you're experiencing now. However you define it, how do you measure success in your own life? And I also want you to consider, what expectations do students impose for themselves in order to be considered successful, whether that be at an academic level or in a extracurricular setting or at home in their home life. What do you think students hold for themselves in order, what level are they expected to be successful in their own lives? I included pictures like the two of the little boy hiding in the box and the little boy having the immense staring standoff with the woman, just because I feel like they represented my feelings and my understandings at a young age, especially at a elementary school age, of how I felt personally in a classroom at home. And it was also kind of a representation of me dealing with this idea of success like one-on-one head on. So this idea of success, wanting to hide from it, not understanding it fully, and also trying to understand it by facing it one-on-one, by trying to kind of get down to the bottom of it and really go head to head with it. I really loved how I created this visual piece because I feel like it really connected me with my topic and my research and understanding of this idea, and kind of brought it all together for me. I am a very visual learner, so this visual representation really aided me through the process of understanding and furthering my research through the success and the development of it in youth involvement. And these are some of my sources. Thank you guys so much again, and I hope you guys all enjoy the rest of the presentations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jen. And